The best of Money Matters. Money Matters with Hongbin, Jeong and Chua, Tian.
This is Money Matters with Hongbin, Jeong and Chua, Tian, bringing you your 2025 budget conversation. And joining us, we have our panelist, Terence, Associate Professor in Practice at the Singapore University of Social Sciences, as well as Nicholas Fang, Director of Security and Global Affairs at the Singapore Institute of International Affairs, as well as Managing Director of Strategic Consultancy at Block Dot. Now, Prime Minister and Finance Minister Lawrence Wong has also announced a slate of measures to support Singaporeans and local enterprises facing rising costs. Have a listen.
We will continue to provide support for us as long as needed within our means. While inflation is expected to ease further this year, prices remain high. Singaporeans are still adjusting to these new price realities. Some have had to tighten their belts, rethink spending habits, or make difficult trade-offs to manage their expenses. Therefore, in this budget, I will provide additional support for Singaporeans.
So just to recap here, he mentioned about $800 in CDC vouchers for every Singaporean household. This is the first $500 will be dispersed in May and the remaining $300 will be given in January 2026. We have up to $760 of YouSave rebates for eligible HDB households this financial year. $500 in LifeSG credits for Singaporean children age 12 and below in 2025, as well as $500 top-up for EduSave or post-secondary education accounts for Singaporeans aged 13 to 20 in 2025. So let's unpack all of this. It looks like more than 90% of last tranche of vouchers were claimed. Is this $800 in CDC vouchers a step in the right direction for the continuation of Community Development Council voucher scheme, Terence?
Yeah, I think Singaporeans have become quite used to how the CDC vouchers, so it's become a very useful part of the array of measures for cost of living alongside tax rebates and other forms of cash payouts. So I think that's why even the SG60 sort of support credits will also take the form of a CDC voucher in terms of the ability to use in the supermarkets, ability to use in heartland stores. So I think this kind of recognition and familiarity that Singaporeans have makes this a useful tool.
I see. Well, Nicholas, how do you think the CDC vouchers and YouSave rebates will impact Singaporean households, especially those in the lower income brackets? Is this enough?
I think it will definitely help. Agreeing with what Terence just said, there is that familiarity and people are very used to deploying these vouchers. Shops and merchants especially are very familiar as well. So I remember in the early phase, it was a bit of a hassle. People, were taking a bit of time to open up the app and scan stuff. But now it's super fast. It's, maybe not as fast as paying with cash, but, certainly if you pay with credit cards and stuff like that, it's almost as quick. So I think that will just make, in terms of integrating into ease of living and ease of payments, I think that will have definitely a bit more benefits now that it's more ingrained in our societies as well. The YouSave rebates, for sure, when it comes to utilities, will definitely help. And I think, again, being deployed in a very targeted fashion, helping especially those people in 1 to 2 room flats, as well as 3 to 4 room flats to a slightly lesser degree. I think that will really be targeting the support for lower income brackets. So, definitely not just convenient and easy to use measures, but very targeted as well.
I see. Well, Terence, what does this signal about the ongoing commitment by the government to helping, Singaporeans cope with cost of living pressures?
Yeah, I think this really recognizes that this is the issue perhaps that's most top of mind for most Singaporeans and has to be addressed. It shows the government is tuned to the concerns of Singaporeans. At the same time, I was also reflecting on what Nicholas shared earlier, that there's always a risk, of course, that it sets up expectations for the future whenever there's high inflation or even prices being elevated right now because inflation actually has come down. There would still be, of course, the expectation that a lot of this support will be available. So I think that's one of the concerns. And I think in the longer term as well, we should look at the other measures besides, immediate support, including the sort of supply-demand dynamics, cause prices to be higher. Of course, a lot of the inflation is imported as well, and hence remittance, managing the exchange rate, all that is contributing as well, beyond just the sort of support package that's given.
Right. Well, one of the new thing that has been announced in this year's budget is the one-off $500 in LifeSG credits for families with children. So, Nicholas, are these credits even closer to, cash equivalents? How will it help defray a wider range of expenses for families?
So they're pretty similar to the LifeSG credits that were given to all national servicemen last year. Personally, I found those very useful too. But they can be deployed in a similar fashion to some of the CDC vouchers, household expenses like groceries, utilities, pharmacy items can be, the cost of these can be defrayed as well. And I think tagging it to each Singaporean child, again, blends into the broader idea of supporting families and potentially encouraging, families with more kids. I know there were specific direct measures aimed at that. So, I think holistically, again, it's a good range of support with some strong signals as to where the government is placing the emphasis on.
I see. Well, Terence, did it take you by surprise when Lawrence Wong announced these more supports for families with children?
Of course, I wouldn't expect particular details, but certainly I did expect that families with children would receive some form of support. And I think the form of support could vary, but overall, it really means that there's something for everybody.
Right.
And depending on the particular family structure, you might qualify for some and not others, and this is certainly welcome.
I see. Well, Nicholas, how do you believe these financial measures also align with Singapore's long-term social welfare policies?
I think there is a very strong recognition that despite the fact that Singapore has always said that we are never going to have a welfare state in that sense, there is potentially more need for help from people, especially given the challenging environment that not just Singapore but all countries are facing in today's world. So I think, again, Terence sort of referenced there may be a growing expectation to see more support from the government in that sense. And, PM Wong himself sort of referenced towards the end of the budget speech when he was talking about what might be on the horizon when it came to maintaining Singapore's budget positions in the years ahead. Expenditure on social and welfare sort of support is expected to go up, potentially even reaching, I believe he said, 20% of GDP in not too long time frame as well. So I think there's a very clear recognition that the government can and will continue to support, especially the more vulnerable demographics within society, and that and that of course then increases the need to have a strong performing economy and not just a balanced, but hopefully a thriving budget that we can deploy to support these groups.
I see. Just to go back on the more support and families here, Terence, do you think that the $500 top up for EduSave or post-secondary education will help kind of build the next generation of Singapore?
Yes, of course, this support must be seen in the overall context as well of the very much larger sums that the government is already spending on education subsidies and grants. And this would be a further boost, giving more money in the hands of families and the children to make decisions for themselves as well.
I see. Well, looking ahead, Nick, are the rebates, insufficient for long-term relief from the rising cost of living, you think?
That is sort of the million-dollar question or billion-dollar question potentially because, Terence just mentioned that inflation does seem to be easing off. And I think there was some cautious optimism that see potentially a more positive economic environment in 2025. But given the early days of the Trump administration, there does seem to be a fair amount of, I think, turbulence is going to put it mildly, potentially chaos, global economy going forward. So, looking into the sort of crystal ball, and I think that this government at least, has done an assessment based on likely outcomes in 2025 and assessed that the deployment of all these different measures will be sufficient. But I'm pretty sure it's based on a relatively short-term prognosis, given that there can be so much uncertainty going forward as well. And I think PM Wong has also sort of intimated that they'll be keeping an eye on developments and making sure that they're ready to respond. Should the fingers crossed things improve or should they take a downturn? Touch wood.
I see. Well, Terence, what are your thoughts? Are these rebates insufficient for, long-term relief from the rising cost of living?
Yeah, so I would view these as more as addressing the immediate or short term. In the longer term is what the government has always stressed, really growing the economy and helping Singaporeans access good jobs with rising real incomes. I think that would be key. I mentioned earlier also that these other factors to be looked at, including the supply and demand factors. But I think if you look at overall cost of living, close attention must be paid to two areas, really healthcare and housing costs, which the government is separately tackling apart from all these shorter-term measures. And finally, there should be strong structural support, which we are seeing through workfare, silver support, the GST voucher, and over time, these will also have to be updated. So not just the short term, but also the structural support and in particular attention to the big-ticket items in healthcare and housing.
I see. Well, that was our conversation on what support will be given to all Singaporeans to tackle cost pressures with our panelists, Terence Ho, Associate Professor in Practice at Singapore University of Social Sciences, as well as Nicholas Fang, who is the Director of Security and Global Affairs at Singapore Institute of International Affairs and the Managing Director of Strategic Consultancy at Black Dot. You're tuned into Money Matters only on Money FM 89.3 as we bring you the 2025 budget conversation.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.